Welcome to Australian Immigration News, and I'm Karl Konrad. This program is brought to you by Australian Immigration Law Services, the company I founded 23 years ago in Sydney. In this past week, there's not been much news regarding Australian immigration matters except the usual political bickering, so we thought it was a good opportunity to bring you a special report about the problems some international students are facing in trying to come to Australia to study. The first is how some Australian universities have preyed upon the dreams of visa hopefuls of those offshore. Some have been enrolling them into courses through online study while they wait for their student visas to be granted. Then when their visas are refused, they are cancelling the confirmation of enrolments, known as COEs, effectively saying, well, that's bad luck and here's your academic transcript and goodbye. The second issue we're looking at today is dubbed the auto refusals by student education agents overseas. This is where the Immigration Department is refusing student visas without proper consideration of the facts, using generic cut and paste decisions based upon the dreaded genuine temporary entry requirement known as the GTE, Ministerial Directions number 69. Tonight we are doing two interviews. We talked to Ahmed, who is 27 from Pakistan, and Nick, who is 29, an Indian national who lives with his family in Brunei. Both of them seem to be victims of this auto-refusal immigration practice, where their applications did not receive an assessment of the most basic facts. However, they each have a very different story to tell in how the universities treated them after they obtained their refusal letters for their student visas. Let's first talk to Ahmed, who has endured a unimaginable, terrible journey. Ahmed has already completed a Bachelor of Information Technology in Australia and was a high distinction student. After the completion of his degree, he was looking forward to gaining work experience on his graduate visa, but the pandemic intervened. Of course, our former PM publicly announced that international students in Australia should go home. After the pandemic died down, Ahmed wanted to pursue his career further by completing a Masters of Business Analytics at Victoria University in Australia. He applied for his new student visa in May this year and was expecting it to be granted for the course start in August, but unfortunately that did not happen. Let's hear what he has to say. Hi Ahmed, thanks so much for joining me for this interview, and thank you for sharing your experiences here with everyone. So tell us, why did you decide to study online outside of Australia with Victoria University?
So it's not the first time I was planning to study in Australia. I am already an Australian graduate. I studied Bachelors of Information Technology from Griffith University. And let me tell you, I'm really impressed with the Australian education system. During the time I spent there, I learned a lot. I experienced different cultures. I built self-awareness. I learned how to think critically, and I developed analytical thinking. And most importantly, I developed a love for books. And then when the borders opened, I finally decided to apply again for my master's degree. I applied for my visa on the 17th of May, just I think a week before the election and the government changed. I never expected my visa to take this long. I was expecting that since my case is strong, I'm already an Australian graduate, so hopefully I'll receive a decision soon. And my classes were going to start in August, but by that time, I still hadn't received my visa. So I consulted some people, even my uni, and they suggested that you should study online. You should start studying online, and you can also send your enrollment send a letter to the visa officer that you are enrolled, so kindly process my visa as soon as possible. So I decided to study, and I actually studied first semester. I've already completed 3 courses, and I completed all these courses with a high distinction.
And what was the reaction of the university when you told them?
They, in about a week of refusal, they sent me an email that your COE is cancelled and you can apply for a refund. But of course, I can't get a refund for the courses I have already studied. And they said that you can actually get a transcript for that. I requested them to issue me a new COE because I was planning to reapply for my visa, but they are not currently willing to issue a new COE as well.
So are they able to continue offering you this course online?
No, because they said that from the next semester, they will transition back to in-person classes. So they won't have online classes anymore.
So let me get this straight. So they enrolled you into the first semester of your master's degree knowing that you may not get your student visa, and if that happened, you wouldn't be able to continue the course?
Yep.
Now, moving on to the Immigration Department side of things, what do you think about the detail in that refusal letter?
So I'm shocked because The refusal letter does not acknowledge the fact that I'm already an Australian graduate. It does not acknowledge my travel history. Like, I was already in Australia. My education agent was also very shocked because first he also didn't expect my visa to be refused because he was confident that my case is strong. And the second reason is that the refusal letter was the exact copy paste of other refusal letters. And there were some cases in which the applicant was refused in only about a few hours of applying for visa. And their refusal letter had the same, everything was same in that. So yeah, it seems like it was an auto refusal. My case was not considered by the visa officer, and my circumstances were not acknowledged.
Now, in this refusal letter, it says, while I accept that obtaining qualifications from an Australian educational institution may positively influence employment and remuneration prospects in the applicant's home country, I am not satisfied that the applicant has demonstrated how they would achieve this against the background of prevailing economic circumstances in their home country. So in other words, they're telling you that things are so bad in your home country that you're not going to go back home.
So in short, the refusal letter says that we are not satisfied you will leave Australia because of the current economic crisis in your country. And another thing that surprises me is that there are many other Pakistani students who got their visa. My question is, like, do they live in a different part of Pakistan and I live in a different part of Pakistan? It doesn't make any sense. And in fact, many of those students were applied first time. They had never been to Australia before.
And you must have been looking forward to finishing your master's degree and obtaining that graduate visa so you could gain some work experience in Australia.
So the first time when I graduated, I couldn't gain any Australian experience due to the pandemic and the circumstances during that time. So of course, if I do study a master's degree this time, I will be happy to gain Australian experience. That will be plus point on my portfolio.
So given all this experience with the student visa application, would you actually recommend anyone else to apply for studies in Australia?
Honestly, considering what happened with me, and not just with me, with any other students, I would advise students to think very carefully before they apply or even decide to study in Australia.
Now, in Ahmed's situation, he was not told by the university he would not be able to complete the course online if his student visa was refused. So was he taken advantage of, luring him into beginning the course before he obtained the visa which he needed to finish it? I'm sure I'm not the only one who finds such a business practice very, very disturbing. And what makes it worse is that Victoria University has wiped their hands of him, denying him the chance to try for the visa once again by cancelling his COE and refusing to give him another one. So they have taken his money given for the first semester subjects, then given him a worthless transcript and effectively telling him, off you go, you're not our problem anymore. Now, of course, Ahmed is a gentleman and not expressing on camera how he truly feels. This student visa auto refusal is a crime of injustice. The department did not even consider the most basic important facts of the application. Now, they did not consider the fact that he had already successfully completed his bachelor degree in Australia. They did not consider the fact that he had completed the first semester of his master's degree with high distinction. And most importantly, they did not consider the fact that he had already demonstrated the willingness to return home even when worst economic crisis was already occurring during the pandemic. Now, this decision is so bad, so unprofessional and so unjust that the auto refusal theory can be the only explanation. It cannot be appealed at the AAT since Ahmed is offshore, and yes, he would likely have no problems winning at the federal court, but that would take years, and how is he going to benefit from that? And the very worst part of all of this is that Victoria University, after pocketing their first semester fees of Ahmed, won't issue him a new COE so he can try for another application. And for those of you who don't know, you cannot even lodge a valid student visa without a COE in place. Now, we put these issues to Victoria University in a series of questions for their responses, but they simply said they do not discuss individual student cases. How convenient. So we asked them to respond to the general question as to why do they enroll students overseas into courses they cannot finish if their student visas are refused. And they said, well, we take complaints very seriously. Maybe one day Victoria University will respond after it spends months analysing the complaint, which is in fact is their term, not ours, but is not going to help Ahmed. If they do, we'll let you know what they had to say. Now in our second interview with Nick, his experience is very similar to Ahmed's concerning the visa refusal and this auto-rejection policy out there. But his experience with Torrens University, where he is applying to study his Masters of Hospitality Management, is completely different, very positive and supportive. Thankfully, he was not encouraged to study online before his student visa was granted and before he comes to Australia. Let's hear of his experiences. G'day Nick, thanks for sharing your story and experiences with us today. Firstly, can you tell us a little about your background and education history?
Well, my bachelor's degree was actually in international hotel and tourism management. I pursued that in Switzerland. I started in 2012. And the course was broken down into 6-month semesters, where after each semester you'd pursue a work placement. So a 2-year study course was stretched to 4 years because I got dotted around into Switzerland, Abu Dhabi, Jamaica, America, and essentially after graduating and finishing my time at America, my dad had a minor health issue, so we decided, right, it was time to come back.
So why did you decide on Australia as the place to undertake your master's program?
It's always been a personal goal of mine to pursue further studies for masters. So initially I did look locally, see if a similar course was available, and unfortunately what was available in the market didn't meet my expectations. Australia Blue Mountain School has the course I'm looking for. It has all the different categories that I was looking to cover, and it's also within my budget. And I've never been and lived in Australia, so I thought, why not take 2 birds with 1 stone and go for it.
So actually you've done an incredible amount of studying and working in various countries, and of course you've got a great history of complying with your visa conditions, and you did not stay illegally there, did you?
No, I didn't. And I've never been kicked out of a country either. Even recently as well, I've applied for a B1, B2 visa in America. They send you through federal clearances, and you get a 10-year visa, and I've gotten that approved as well.
So how did you first feel when you got this refusal letter for your student visa application?
In a state of shock and dejected, really, because I couldn't comprehend initially why I felt I was so thorough, everything was so planned, and taking this decision to study wasn't just a on-the-fly decision. It's been in the pipeline for quite some time. So I did put a lot of work in, and to make matters a little bit more concerning for me is that I'm currently working and I have to serve a 3 months notice to my employer to say, hey, I'm actually leaving. So you got to start recruiting and finding somebody. On one end, I was trying to rationalize and figure out what went wrong. And at the other side, I had to inform my employers, my clients, that, hey, wait a minute, things are changing and I may be staying on.
And after reading the details of this refusal letter, do you think they actually took into account your personal circumstances?
When you look into the reasons for refusal, it's predominantly a very subjective statement of we believe that the quality of life and standard of living is higher in Australia in comparison to your proposed return country, and therefore we believe that's sufficient motivation for you to stay in Australia. So essentially I just felt that didn't really make much sense, because the whole element of pursuing further studies, you're going to want to go to a place that can further you, and generally that's in more developed countries. So of course, whenever you make that comparison, it's always going to be, yes, our quality of life is better. That's why you're coming. We have quality education. That's why you're coming here. But when you compare it to any other home country, it's going to always be less. So I feel like that was an unfair judgment on me.
Well, that's right. If they applied that logic, then they would not give student visas to people in any developing country.
More than half the world. Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Actually, in your case, you were fortunate enough that you had Torrens University supportive and give you another COE.
They were initially shocked at the refusal, but they rallied and said, look, let's address the concerns highlighted in the initial refusal and just bolster the statement even more. And then after I had finished that, they reviewed it on 2 tiers of review, and they believed, yes, okay, his portfolio still seems genuine and his portfolio seems strong. They can't possibly refuse him a second time. And lo and behold, 10 days after applying, I get a refusal notification again on more or less the exact same premise of quality of life in Australia is better, therefore you won't want to return to your home country.
And by the way, Nick, have you seen the page on the Immigration Department's website about the GTE statement? And I'll read it out to you. It says, the genuine temporary entry requirement is not intended to exclude students who, after studying in Australia, develop skills Australia needs and who then go on to apply for permanent residency. So how do you feel about this statement and the way the department treated you?
It's not good because it makes me feel a bit upset that they would take a completely objective form of vetting, let's say bank statements, your credentials, your travel history, your medical health, and then add a very subjective element to it, such as the GTE. Because if the person reviewing my application has a bad day or is not in the right mindset, they're not necessarily going to be convinced or inconvinced of what I'm saying. And I feel that when they mentioned elements of lack of evidence, it just makes you wonder, what else could I give? So I'm really at a loss at this moment as to what else can I give as proof.
Well, you are lucky that the university is now looking to give you a third COE so you can try again.
I hope so. They're currently reviewing it right now, and they said they would, because this is all still quite fresh. So their team is now going through a round of reviews, and hopefully they come back with a positive indicator, because I'm still really keen on moving my life forward and just coming to Australia. You know, I feel like there's so much it has to offer, not just in terms of education, but as an experience of living in such a multicultural world, and that's so young as well. Like, I feel that's a part of me that I'm missing, and I want to see what that's like. And to be denied that just on a study visa premise was really disheartening.
And what do you think about this generic comment that they've made in your decision letter? Accordingly, I am not convinced the proposed course will add value to the applicant's future.
That was how can you make that decision on my life? You know, what I choose to do with my education is in my control. And again, touching back at whether they considered my personal circumstance, this is a key component that they didn't.
Yes, indeed. Being told the course is not a value to your future must be the ultimate insult by a bureaucratic system. Surprisingly, this government, with the Home Affairs Minister publicly stating they are not willing to scrap the GTE, makes you wonder why. The GTE was introduced by the Labor government's arch enemy number one, Peter Dutton, when he was just the Immigration Minister back in 2016. You would think that Labor would have jumped on the opportunity to use it to criticise Dutton now that he is the opposition leader. We will cover more on that issue in our in-depth analysis of these guidelines and how they really are used as a tool of discrimination against visa applicants from developing countries. Nick and Ahmed both feel the same frustration and disappointment with the Immigration Department in the handling of their applications, but it's the way they were treated by the universities which have been so different. Nick still feels willing to soldier on and fight, but Ahmed has received a double blast of negativity which is hard to get over. Will Victoria University shift its refusal and give him a new COE? We will wait and see. Even if they do, does Ahmed still want to come to Australia? If they don't give him a COE, will they refund his first semester tuition fees? Any reasonable person can see that they should. Now, this video has been our longest ever production, and thanks to all of you who have stayed to watch. Stay tuned for our feature stories and other immigration law updates by subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done so. And don't forget to support the work we do here by hitting that like icon and sharing these videos onto your friends to watch. As always, take care out there, and I'll see you next time. So bye for now.